So welcome everyone to today's talent acquisition webinar. My name is John Carsabay and I'm the host and moderator of this event. A little bit about myself. I'm currently the CIO at myBasePay. We're a fintech platform that provides the back office payroll funding and candidate onboarding solutions, primarily targeting staffing and the corporate talent acquisition teams. So in general, lately and coming out of pandemic, we've all experienced very interesting times, and current market conditions are very dynamic, as you guys all know and experience when it comes to the wars for talent and the war on retention, as we've been hearing lately. So that was one of the primary reasons why we wanted to organize an event like this and hear different perspectives and practical strategies, analyze the use cases directly from the practitioners in this space. So I'm very excited about this event, mainly because we get an opportunity to hear and learn from a panel of industry experts in staffing, talent acquisition. So that's, we've been planning this for quite some time. I hope you guys find a lot of value out of this. Anyways, enough of this fluff and intro talk. Let me just introduce our panelists. Dalia, I'll start with you, and then we can go to Ben, Scotti, and then Cesar.
Sure. Thank you, John, and thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Dalia Burack, and I head up talent acquisition for Bluegreen Vacations. We are a hospitality company. We're in the vacation ownership space. We employ around 5,000 associates with resorts all over the country and a couple in the Caribbean. We have 69 properties, and we're in over 40 states. And we've been in business for a little over 55 years, and I've been with the company for 14 of those, so I'm a rookie. And really happy to be here. Looking forward to having this discussion today. Ben, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dalia. My name is Ben Dickinson. I am the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition for the Americas at Citrix Systems, headquartered in Fort Lauderdale. So we have our office in Fort Lauderdale, 4 offices in Fort Lauderdale, employ about 1,700 people in the local market, 40 offices worldwide, about 9,000 employees. Citrix is a technology company. One of our main products is a workspace technology that allows people to work from any device in any location, anywhere they want to do their best work. So excited to talk to everybody about, what the future holds and how the last year has gone for all of us in the TA space. Scotti?
Thanks, Ben. So my name is Scotti. I work for PeakActivity. We're a technology solutions firm. We are headquartered in the Boynton Beach area. We have a little, just about 200 employees now. We grew a lot in the last year. PeakActivity has been around for a little over 5 years, and I've been in the recruitment space for a little over 10 years. So just a little bit about me. Cesar?
Thank you, Scotti. Thank you for everybody being here as well. Cesar Jimenez, CEO of myBasePay. Like John alluded to, we're an employer record services company for the staffing agencies and also corporate TA for enterprises as well. I've been in the South Florida market for 25 years, been doing the same thing. So happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation, especially sharing the panel with this group.
That's awesome. Thank you everyone for these introductions. Quick housekeeping items. For all of you guys, just send your questions in through the Q&A section down below, or you can ping them directly to me through chat. For those on the YouTube where we're streaming, you can also send me your questions through direct messages there as well. So we will reserve the last 10-15 minutes of this webinar for the Q&A, where you guys will get a chance to get your questions answered by the panelists. So definitely feel free to send them as we go along. We'll record this session as well, make this available on demand for those who are not able to attend. So we'll dive right in. So one thing that I've been hearing a lot lately from a lot of executives, especially from Ivy Podcast perspective, I talk to a lot of them on a daily basis. A lot of you actually came on the show as well. And one of the recurring themes, especially coming out of pandemic, is how do other executives or other organizations really structuring their organizations from the workforce structure perspective? We've all been virtual. We go into hybrid models. There's other different structures this company are experimenting. So curious to kind of get that perspective directly from you guys. Dalia, I would love to start with you to get an understanding of how you guys are preparing your organization for this next period. What are the different examples that you can share with us?
Sure, happy to. Thank you, John. So a few interesting tidbits about Bluegreen. Because we're in the hospitality industry, I would say approximately 80% of our workforce is face-to-face. And so we reactivated most of our business. We ramped up the reactivation, but really happened quite quickly, right around May, the end of May of 2020. And so it was since May of 2020 that we really started to come back to the office, if you will, because again, we are in a face-to-face environment. But the 20% of our associates that are not face-to-face in their jobs have been in a hybrid scenario since May of last year. So right now, and that's predominantly like our corporate offices and our other administrative offices. So what we're doing, what we've been doing now for the past few weeks and months is evaluating plans for the remainder of the year as it relates to coming back to the office, if you will, and what that actually means. We are evaluating this at the role level as well as at the location or geography level. And business unit level. We're also having conversations, a lot of conversations about our real estate and our office footprint and what that sort of looks like in the future. But everything we're doing as it relates to coming back to the office is centered around a lot of consideration, inclusivity, and sensitivity to the changes in people's lives and our associates' lives through the pandemic, right? And not only have people's lives changed in terms of the logistical aspect of it, but also their priorities, right? And so we are not going back to the workforce we had, let's say in February of 2020. We're really looking at a very different, at things through different lenses. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of inclusivity around that, and just taking things day by day and not jumping the gun on anything. We're trying not to make any rash decisions. And we're also considering our future associates. So in these roles that could be potentially remote, right? There was a time when pre-pandemic where certain roles, it just was easy to make them office-based. And today, expectations from the workforce are different potentially. So again, really looking at things from all angles, evaluating the current labor market and our needs, and really looking at things, kind of turning everything upside down and looking at it from a very different angle as it relates to the way we operate our business. So in short, I'll say we haven't made any decisions, basically.
Yeah, that
Good.
resonates. I hear that a lot with other organizations dealing with the same kind of situation as well. So Ben, can you share with us your perspectives on that particular area? And also, if you could comment on, I've been hearing a lot with kind of the employee anxiety perspective with everyone being fully remote and coming back to the offices. How do you deal with that particular situation? How do you prepare your org for that period?
Well, yeah, I think that's something that everyone needs to prepare for. In the recent Microsoft Workforce report, it said over 40% of employees are expecting to change jobs if they have to go back to work full time or back to the office full time. So something that I think we all need to try and brace for. If you had stability in the last year, you didn't see a lot of movement, right? I'd say Citrix was certainly a beneficiary of that. We didn't see a ton of attrition last year. Fortunately, being in the virtual workspace technology world, we had a lot of business last year. That allowed us as an organization to spin, our entire staff fully remote, almost on a dime last year at the beginning of all of this. And we have been and remain to be fully remote right now. We have a phased return to office plan. Phase 3 is looking here in Fort Lauderdale to start in July, which will be voluntary, but returning to office on sort of a hybrid, cycle where each department will have a day or two a week that they go back in. We've got some new technology that's going to allow for that too, where people will be kind of checking into desks. So no one has their own desk anymore. All of those things have changed so that, they can be cleaned a little bit easier and we can rotate staff. But phase 4 wasn't really intended to kick back around for Citrix until next year. Which is that sort of back to normal full, back in. This week is a bunch of meetings around all the new CDC guidelines and, masks being changed in Florida and all that. So I say all that, and 2 weeks from now, I could be calling you from my office. Who knows what's really going to happen in the next couple of weeks. But, we've been trying to make the associates feel really comfortable by, ensuring that it was voluntary during phase 3. There's still masks, social distancing, the check-in program of ways to make people feel like it would be safe if you went back into office. One of the things that, we we found in some surveying of our associates on who wanted to come back and who didn't, was we had a big chunk, 40% said, I don't want to go back ever, right? I'm really comfortable. I like this. About 50% were comfortable in this hybrid environment because we do have a lot of staff near offices. And then this other pocket that said, I need to go back full time was a group that I don't think I was personally thinking about, right? Where we have individuals that perhaps were either in environments at home that weren't really conducive to getting any work done, or they were alone. And, I've got my own support, network and system here in my house. So I didn't really feel isolation, but, a single individual working in a studio apartment somewhere isn't interacting with any other people. And so there is a pocket of folks that do want to go back, even though we hear a lot of the, the fully virtual noise. And I'm going to probably keep my team virtual for some time as I've expanded them into different geos in the country where we don't have offices. But we're starting to focus on those people that want to come back too and make sure that they have that option.
That's a good point. That 40% number is staggering. That's alarming, actually.
People enjoy this, wearing your PJs at work all day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Oh, and anxiety and the stress, I would imagine that also a huge factor with making a lot of these decisions. And based on what Ben and you, Dalia, talked about, it's also going to take a lot of experimentation as well through the next period to really understand what's working, what's not, taking those lessons learned and applying that back to some of the strategies you guys are implementing. So really appreciate some of those insights. Makes perfect sense. So the other kind of area I wanted to touch upon is around talent acquisition trends, especially post-pandemic. Scotti, I'll start with you if you don't mind. When it comes to talent acquisition trends that you've been researching, that you've been observing, that really shape the way companies attract talent these days, what trends have been shaped as a result of the pandemic that impacted the talent acquisition? Share with us kind of your perspectives from that standpoint.
Yeah, so at PeakActivity, one of the things that I focus on, we actually do talent as a service that we offer to our clients as well. So not only do we do social media and high-level technology, high-level software development, we actually offer talent as a service to someone who might not need a project or might need something very small, but they might need a person or a team. So I actually get the opportunity to talk to a lot of different clients. I work directly with the clients, and I do get to hear all of these different trends. And the one that I have talked about most, and especially with my clients, is the remote work. It just opens up the talent pool 100%. And it also does allow for some flexibility in salary. People in New York are willing to take a pay cut to move to Florida. There's tax breaks. And then there are people who live in somewhere in the Middle East, in Michigan, and they're not making as much money as the people in New York. And that's a demographic area. So, and then also, going offshore. If you have the, means to work remotely, you can actually find great talent. We've at PeakActivity, to work on our projects, we work with teams all over the world, which really opens up the talent pool and is also great because sometimes those people end up being cheaper for the same exact price. So it's the remote work. People love it. And then also the hybrid model too. I just don't think that anybody's ready to go into the office full time. Although I do get Ben's point about the isolation. There are days where you don't leave the house, and that sometimes is a problem. So
yeah, those are very interesting perspectives. And Scotti, you've mentioned international markets as well. Tell us a little bit more about that. What markets have you seen to be, very interesting when it comes to talent acquisition outside of US?
So we work with a large team in Argentina. So we have a lot of people on the PeakActivity staff that do live in Argentina, and actually a lot of them in Argentina are friends, which is even better. And then Colombia has a really great talent pool as well. And then we use India for some things too. So we've met a lot of partners in the past few years, and we have some that we use multiple different places. So Colombia is a really interesting one because they actually are on the same time zone, if not maybe just 1 hour difference.
That's right.
So, and it's a really great talent pool from what I've seen.
That's great. Very interesting. Interesting markets, and definitely thank you for sharing that. Cesar, would love to, your commentary on that particular topic as well. What are some of the things you're observing as trends? Because you're on both sides of the equation, as well as staffing industry expert and now building the technology for this segment. What are some of the things that you've been researching lately?
Absolutely. I mean, I won't touch too much on because I think Scotti did a great job on remote. I think everybody understands that that's actually a competitive advantage for companies today. Having no geographic constraints is huge. So you're right. And for every point that you went over, remote is actually now it's a permanent thing. It's not if you're going to go remote. People are willing to do it 100%. I have clients that tell me that, absolutely they were the opposite. They didn't like remote. Now some cases they don't want people to come back because the productivity is so high. So and then you have other camps that say, you know what, we like a little bit of a hybrid because there's a little bit of something missing sometimes, depending on the role in respect to collaboration. So, but for the most part, remote is going to be here to stay, 100%. A couple of things that I noticed that, and I'm going to point out Dalia on this one too, is I think employers today, by the way, everyone is hiring. Everybody knows that. Hiring is better than ever. I've been in the staffing business for 25 years, and I would say this is the busiest I've ever seen in any economy, right? So when you have that, everybody's hiring the same type of resources. So employers need to take a step back and actually look at their employer value proposition. What are they doing different? What is it? Candidates have a lot of options today. Candidates want a lot of different things. And actually, it's not just money and benefits. It's, can I be developed? Can I grow? So, creating a really strong employer value proposition and a consistent message is, to me, the foundation in order to attract the right type of talent. That's what I see a lot of companies doing. I mean, Dalia and her company, she works over there at Bluegreen, do a really good job, and the consistency is great. So the brand, it sounds like I never been to Bluegreen, but it looks like a heck of a fun company to work for. You see, there's a lot of good vibes.
You're welcome anytime, Cesar.
I think I just invited myself, but anyway, it's all good. I mean, it's you see that it creates this great perception of organization that's very inviting. And companies need to be able to promote a lot of wins or employee testimonials, things like that, to attract the type of talent, because everybody can pay anybody money. Anybody has benefits. Those are all the different things. You got to look for something that separates yourself away from the rest of the employers. And you got to find that. And I believe that's where the C-suite comes in. It comes from the top down. You got to be able to have, and I also believe, I have another thing written down that I believe in this market, in this type of trend that I see, I think talent acquisition executives and HR executives has a seat at the C-suite table more than ever, because me now had this great opportunity to start up myBasePay, and I've been servicing TA executives. Now I'm on the other side. I'm actually, one of the most important things that I need to make sure, and my number one job, is to bring in the right talent. And to me, the recruiters that help me, they have to be literally sitting next to me, because they have to understand our company vision, our value prop, and understand that it doesn't happen without the right people, right? That doesn't happen. So that's the trend that I see. I see more TA and HR executives have a seat at the table and creating that brand together and driving a consistent message across the organization. The other thing that I see out there that it's exciting is just flexible work models. I see there's a ton of hiring platforms now. There's different types of things. A lot of my clients today, when we ask them, okay, you're looking for this and different type of resources, they're open to say, is this full-time position? They say, I don't care if it's full-time. I don't care if it's contract. I don't care if it's a freelancer. What I want is the right talent, because everybody is looking for the same people. And the more open you are to different type of worker models to bring in those workers, the better chance you have to secure the talent and be able to hit your goals and compete. At the end of the day, it's about getting the right talent to be able to hit your goals in order to continue to innovate and continue to compete. That's at least what I see right now when I talk to the executives that I talk to.
Yeah, very interesting insights. Thank you for sharing both, Scotti and Cesar, from that standpoint. I'm pretty sure we could probably talk about that topic for the rest of the webinar, but just wanted to move on to something that, you all couldn't have set me up any better for the topic I want to cover on war and retention, because we all talk about, the talent scarcity and companies also, thinking in a sense, yes, my talent pool is going to increase because I'm going fully remote. I'm accessing talent all over the world. But at the same time, the competition increased 10x, probably because exactly the same companies, maybe much bigger, maybe with much better packages, going after the same talent as well. So that war on retention, elevates to the new heights for organizations to be able to design a system, an environment to hold on to their top performers. So when it comes to that particular area, Ben, I'll start with you if you don't mind. With so many opportunities in the current market, what are some of the strategies that really help your organization stay very competitive when it comes to retention?
Yeah, so I think we approach this from a philosophy of hygiene factors and true motivators, right? So the hygiene factors are the things that have to be answered, at base level in order to keep an employee, and that is compensation, office location, or now hybrid work environment, remote work environment. Do they have the support to do the job? Kind of the basic needs that every employer has to provide their employee. And if you can't meet those, then you can't really focus on the next phase of that, which is the retention piece. And so that's the true motivator side. One of the ways that we really focus on that is, we have an internal mobility program here that allows individuals to help, whether it's through mentorship or sponsorship through the company, create a career path that will allow them to continue growing. We have an upskilling program right now in our technology organization that allows folks that are working in certain technologies but want to try and continue to grow. John, you and I talked a lot about data science a few months back, right? Like that's an area where we need to see more skill, and there's just a lack of talent there. So we can retain employees by giving them the training to really improve skills in that area and move their career in that direction. And then the last thing is work-life balance. We do a lot of work in kind of surveying and having temperature checks with our associates to see how they're doing. And when we see that surveying come down, we recognize that there are things that we need to do to get creative. Things we'll see this summer at Citrix are no meeting Fridays, half days on Fridays in a lot of departments anyway. We're also talking of doing some planned time off as an organization, right? So everyone agrees that we'll all take off at a certain time. That way, when you come back, you're not coming back to 200 emails that you missed when you took off last week, right? Everyone's going to take it off at the same time. And those are ways that we want to try and keep people feeling fresh and motivated, happy to continue working at Citrix, paired with all the kind of the core stuff that we need to do, like money.
Yeah, very interesting. And thanks for sharing that. And, to add to that, I would imagine the brand name of the organization also plays a big part in kind of from retention aspect perspective. So very interesting. Thanks, Ben. Scotti, can you talk to us a little bit about that? How do you guys go about designing and executing some of the strategies when it comes to retention?
Yeah, so it's something that, it's tough these days, I've got to say, because there are the companies, the large Googles, Amazons that we all are going against, and they're getting great talent that all of our organizations have trained. And, it's hard to compete with them, but, it comes down to pretty much the same exact things: culture, continued education. Having great leadership is another thing, because if you have great leadership, then, and continue education even on the leadership side, so that you can retain your people by, being a great manager. People don't leave, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And I think that is a big thing. You always remember, a time that a manager has been, really rude to you, or it was bad, and you would do anything to get out of that job. You would hop at a second. But when you have a great leader and you have a great manager and you have great leadership, people really start to think, okay, well, I don't want to leave them. Maybe I'll talk to them and see if they can, do something to keep me, or even before they start searching, they have such a great relationship with their leadership that they can talk about it before it gets to the fact that they have to leave. So I feel like it comes with a lot of that, given the culture and the team, and really taking effect into that when you're recruiting and thinking about that is one of the most important things.
Yeah, those are great points, Scotti, you're making. And one that really stands out from the leadership perspective is really, the executive team, the leadership team make that investment into the workforce, being able to, small things that go a long way to provide, resources and availability to work on side projects, to work on something that the employees are very passionate about. I think those things become very important, because through pandemic, everyone being stuck in, in their home offices, you need diversity in the sense working on different projects, different challenges. So I think that's, something that you've alluded to, which is a very strong point. Dalia, can you share with us your perspectives on how your company is dealing and executing the strategies for retention?
Sure, absolutely. All really great points by everyone. I'll just add that, I'll reiterate that cross training is a big deal for sure. So giving people, again, the opportunity to do different things and to then also capitalize on their skill sets and leverage those. We're taking a very strong position on re-recruiting our associates. So really understanding where they stand, doing pulse checks on how they feel, and re-recruiting them, right? Why is it great to be at Bluegreen, and and reminding them of our employee value proposition, right? So it's interesting because organically organizations will always, especially when there's a talent shortage, focus most of their attention on acquiring new talent and filling vacancies. And so often, and this happens in business too, not just with talent, the cell phone companies or the companies that just give promotions to all the new clients, but then the existing clients don't benefit from any of those promotions, right? So it's the same kind of concept with associates. I always remind our leadership teams, let's not forget about our current associates and making sure that we're re-recruiting them. So from a strategy on retention, that's a big one for us. And obviously that's very, broad encompassing kind of thing. The other thing that we're doing is, really leveraging this new remote workspace for those jobs that are remote, to build trust in different ways. So pre-pandemic, when we were in person, building trust happened, when you walk from one meeting to another together and you're having you're chit-chatting about life, or when you're popping into somebody's office, or when you're meeting in the coffee room. Well, those things are no longer happening, because when we're done with a meeting, we're signing off, right? We're not having that small chat. So how do we kind of bridge those gaps? And some of the things that we've implemented as leadership teams is we have virtual coffees. We literally just set up 30 minutes with just, whether it's people on your team, people outside of your team, and just have, unscripted conversation, no agenda, and just get to know people. So I think it requires an extra effort by organizations to build the trust that you may not have the opportunity to do in traditional ways. We addressed flight risk pockets, right? So we're paying close attention to competitors. We're watching very closely to our competition, not necessarily just direct competition, but indirect too. Employers in the area, what are they doing? What are they, we're physically watching, and we're figuratively watching to see what they're doing, so that we can try to be as proactive as possible. Because my theme for all of this war on retention, from a Bluegreen perspective, is being proactive, is trying to get as much ahead of it as possible, because when you're reactive in that space, you're a little too late. So it's really important, especially when it comes to the emotional connection associates have with a company. They don't want you to come in with a counter offer. They want you to re-recruit them before they get to getting another offer from a company. So, so those are my contributions.
No, that's great. And I think overall, from that proactive standpoint, I think it seems so simple, but oftentimes overlooked, where you get almost blindsided when the top performer comes to you and says, "Hey, I just got an opportunity with this company," and that probably already too late.
Yeah, that's a huge miss.
I love that. And from the training and feedback standpoint that you had mentioned, those really stood out to me, because continuous improvement is of utmost importance for everybody. And feedback is king as well when it comes to be able to run a high performing organization. If your employees are not getting the feedback, are not getting communicating in terms of how they're doing and what's next, I think you're only just positioning yourself for something that another organization who is doing a lot better job will reach out and propose something like that. So those are great points. I really appreciate those insights from all of you. And the other area I want to touch upon is I hear a lot with organizations designing just overall their workforce from flexibility and agility standpoint to be able to scale up, or I guess down at times, in unfortunate events, in a very efficient, fast, flexible manner. So the concept of contingent workforce has been growing pretty tremendously, especially the last couple of days. So I really want to talk a little bit about this trend when it comes to trends and insights with respects to companies seeking more flexible structures and utilizing the contingent workforce to attain such objectives. Cesar, I'll start with you. Can you share your thoughts on what are you observing as you collaborate with a lot of different organizations when it comes to contingent workforce?
Absolutely. What I see out there today, and in general, we have a good opportunity because we're talking to so many different enterprises and within our portfolio alone. And I would tell you that companies leveraging contingent workforce model it's just another competitive advantage for them. It's another talent pool that they can tap into. Obviously, the pandemic taught a lot of businesses a lot of things about, especially uncertainty, right? When you have an uncertainty economy, when everything is not 100% stable, contingent work models really are that flexibility, that workforce agility to be able to have an easy exit or just be able to scale up, scale down. Some positions, I think it starts with workforce planning. I think at the table right there, they need to decide, do they really see sustaining an FTE, or is this something can be addressed by a contingent worker that doesn't necessarily be trained, right? They're usually coming in with a high level expertise in a certain particular area. And then if it's seasonal or if it's just cyclical, right? So it's just a safer model. And it can also be more long-term. And also more of the worker pool out there anyway wants to be as contingent workers more than ever. Right now, it's roughly it's about 38% of the US workforce right now is contingent workers. So that's a big number. That went from about 10 years ago was in the low 20s. Now you're talking about it's creeping over 40, and it's predicted by 2025 to be over 50% of the US workforce is going to be contingent labor. So it's an absolute, something that companies are going to have to adapt into and know how to leverage a contingent workforce model. That's the big thing. The other thing that I see a big trend out there more than ever is these hiring platforms, Upwork, Fiverr. There's a ton of freelancing portals out there where now corporations have direct access to talent versus the traditional, agency models. I mean, they can go directly there. Now, I think that's huge. I mean, just over the last 12 months, over 2 million Americans started freelancing just in the last 12 months alone for the pandemic. That's a big number. So this is another population of another talent pool that companies can take advantage of. Now, there's obviously risk there. I always say, you got to do your homework, right? So you got to do your homework. There's obviously, how do you engage with those type of resources, right? If you're going to hire them on a contingent basis, what kind of model do you have to make sure that you separate them from your FTEs? What kind of programs do you have in place? What type of monitoring do you have in place to make sure that you're doing it in a compliant manner, no matter what? Because obviously payroll and hiring these folks is highly regulated, and you have to be really cautious. Obviously, we have myBasePay actually has a model that can support those type of things to mitigate those risks. But there's a ton of other companies out there that will be able to support that can give you that access to those hiring platforms as well. That's what I see out there. Another big one is just, like to kind of reiterate on the worker classification. I can't reiterate that enough. The risk is big. There's been a lot of, fines. There's been a lot of penalties. It's highly regulated. The government is actually, this is because it's such a big growth trend. They're spending a lot of money and a lot of attention onto to organizations and targeting organizations to make sure that their program is compliant. So, before you start, if you know how to leverage contingent workers, great. If this is something you're adapting into now and you want to take advantage of it, I would definitely partner with an organization, or at least do your research to make sure you're doing it the right way.
Great. Those are very, very insightful comments around that particular concept of the contingent workforce and how to design an organization from that perspective. Dalia, can you share your thoughts on how do you guys go about this at Bluegreen Vacations and just basically design org utilizing contingent workers?
Sure. And just to piggyback on what Cesar was talking about, one thing that we started to explore recently, we're almost in the final stages of sort of signing, is the gig-based platforms, right? So it's like, there are organizations out there that provide contingent workers in a similar fashion that maybe an Uber would, or DoorDash, or any of these services, right? So you have basically an app and you order workers. It's a growing business, and it's one that we are exploring. It sounds a little too good to be true. There's still some challenges that need to be worked out, and some things that Cesar mentioned as well. So for example, how do you take a training program that you traditionally put people through? So in our case, let's just say housekeepers. You bring in a housekeeper, you may put them through a week of training. How do you now take someone who's coming in to take a shift rather than be an FTE, right? They're signing up for the day. They're like, I'm going to work one shift today. How do you train those folks? How do you maintain business continuity? And how do you still maintain brand advocacy when you have people kind of coming in and out? So there are definitely some things that we're still working through, and more to come. So if anyone's interested in the outcome of that, check in with me in a month or so, and I'll let you know how that's going. But the goal here is about and Cesar touched on this, is remaining flexible and really thinking. I mean, we used to think outside the box. We've put thinking outside the box to shame at this point. We think beyond, I don't know what. I mean, it's like the most creative thinking we've ever had to do, because we are in that dire of need of workers, and there's such a severe shortage of hourly employees. So some things we're looking at is, again, Cesar mentioned this, part-time associates. Do we always need a full-time associate? And then the other thing is, if you're going to try to attract part-time associates for jobs that you don't traditionally do that for, what are your offerings? What's your employer value proposition for those folks? We traditionally do not offer health and life benefits to part-time associates. We're evaluating that now. So again, it's really just opening up. It's really been all about removing those obstacles that we might have allowed to come in our way in the past, to really open up those pipelines for as much flexibility as possible, and just looking at the business from different set of lenses. But it doesn't come without any complexity and a lot of thought to make sure that you don't walk into something that seems like it's a good solution to then end up with so much damage control. And I think that's what a lot of what Cesar was talking about.
Excellent. Great insights, Dalia. Thank you for sharing that. Ben, can you add some commentary around that from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, contingent labor is a lever that we pulled last year for sure. When, one of the, I guess it was the fortunate thing for Citrix at an unfortunate time with the pandemic, is that our customer, usage rate went through the roof. And that required us to really expand customer support and tech support associates to support this influx of customers, right? Just new licenses being turned on, customers that existed or other new customers. And the only way we were able to accomplish that, right, in the hundreds of tech support reps in each of our locations, was to leverage a contingent labor model and work with our agency partners to help us staff up in those areas. We use it today even on my recruiting team and in other pockets of the organization as well, where we'll have a mix of a handful of contractors, a handful of FTEs. One of the things that Cesar was talking about kind of risks and implications that we've been really focused on is its timelines, right? And how long we want to keep a contractor on doing that role. I think, in times past, we've been a little bit contractor heavy, then we go kind of lean on contractors, but you've got managers throughout the organization that have folks that are great, right? They're great employees or great contractors, sorry, and they produce really well, and managers don't want to lose them. But, you turn around and they've been on the company, on contract for 18 months. And, we really need to start thinking about that. There's been plenty of examples of, large technology companies that have gotten in trouble with that. Even the Ubers of the world now are kind of battling with this, as well. So trying to put some stricter guidelines around that for our managers to say, hey, this person's on a clock now. You either need to figure out if you can get headcount budget to convert them, or we need to go ahead and replace them. And, sometimes the money factor is a big problem too when you try to convert. It can be pretty lucrative to be a contractor as well. And bringing them on to your payroll as an FTE is sometimes a stretch and very difficult to achieve. So those are the things that we face as we leverage that. But it's definitely a lever that we pull.
That's great. Thank you, Ben. Great insights. I appreciate you guys sharing. Ben, your audio was cutting out a little bit towards the end, but hopefully it gets fixed for the next segment. Future of work, Scotti, and I want to talk to you about this first. According to recent publication by Deloitte, the future of work is being shaped by kind of these two forces, the growing adoption of artificial intelligence in the workplace and the expansion of the workforce to include both on and off balance sheet talent. So what changes could be in store for the workplace, for the workforce as well, and the nature of the work itself based on the current initiatives in place at your organization?
Yeah, so I think especially with, when we're talking about like artificial intelligence and machine learning specifically, I think it opens up so many opportunities as to what is to come. And we're still trying to figure out what is to come. I feel like throughout most of our lifetimes, we've gone through, the internet coming up and how many awesome jobs have evolved from the internet. I mean, if you would have asked any of our parents when we were growing up, if there was going to be a job in social media that was actually a very highly paid job, these days, because it has just become such an important thing. So it's something that, us in this market, we have to be ready for anything that comes. There are going to be so many new jobs that come to our world because they've been replaced with robots and new technologies. So I think it's really up to us and us as a company. We stay up to trends on as much as possible. The AR VR space, that's one of the most exciting things that we've been doing in the emerging technology. Staying up on new trends, knowing exactly what, and us as recruiters, we have to learn these jobs on a dime. We have to learn what Unity is when we don't know what it is, and what the person who we're really talking to is learning what it is as well. So while keeping our values and our culture and everything that we're learning. And in terms of the on and off balance sheet, one of the things I wanted to add to that is allowing people to really pick what they want to do. Do they want to be a full-time employee? Do they want to be a contractor? But I think the most important thing is treating them as if they are an employee regardless.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean paying for their benefits or, giving them time off or anything. It's treating them as if they are a coworker at all times. That's invite them to your meetings, even though you might get charged the hour. What's the big deal? They know what's going on in your company. They feel like they want to be a part of your organization as long as they feel that way. So, staying up on market trends and keeping your contractors and employees happy and treating them all the same, I think is a big aspect as to what's going to come into the future.
Scotti, that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes, as advocates, for the contingent workers, sometimes they're created as a different class of citizen in some respects, but
yeah, it's easy, but they're the same people. I mean, you never know if they're a contractor or not in our company. So, and I know that's a lot. I know that's a lot of different companies as well.
That's great insights. Thank you, Scotti. Just quick time check. We only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker because I also want to save some time for people to ask questions. So Ben, can you provide 2 cents kind of into the concept of the future of work? What are you seeing there?
Well, I guess my 2 cents is TA is the new IT is a term that I've been throwing around a good bit lately. And I'm glad I got a good reaction from this crew anyway on that.
I like that.
But every organization went through digital transformation in the last 15 years, right? The number one job poster for technology jobs on Monster last year was a healthcare company. So it's not just companies like Citrix, right? It's not just technology companies that need technologists. And I think finding the talent to run those systems, to run, this AI and all of that is going to be a huge requirement for organizations. And so we've all got to continue to reinvent ourselves, find new talent pools, create new ways to grow talent. I mean, we've really shifted heavily into our UR focus as well, because it's just not easy to find the talent. And as we look at the next generation that's coming out, nearly half of them don't want to work for a big corporation, right? They want to work for themselves, this gig economy or anything else. So we've got to figure out ways to engage those individuals and build the workforce that we need going forward. So I think the talent acquisition plays a huge part in that. We'll be tasked with a big ask.
I love these concepts and the acronym they used. It's pretty cool. Dalia, can you talk a little bit about this from your perspective?
I love what Ben said, and Scotti. The only thing I would just add is, again, thinking outside the box in the hospitality space. I'm sure you all have read some of the publications about the hospitality industry leveraging AI more and more, leveraging robots more and more. We heard of restaurants that are using, machine learning for servers and all kinds of different things. So I just think that, I just piggyback on what Ben said. I think we just have to really stay ahead of the game when it comes to understanding how these changes happen and just prepare for them. I don't think they're necessarily going to eliminate jobs in the future, but I do think they're going to change. These concepts are going to change the workforce and change really what those skill sets look like and what is actually needed. But yeah, really a lot of what they said was covered.
I love that. Those are great examples. And the other concept and the trend that I want to touch upon very briefly because we're on time crunch, from direct sourcing perspective, Cesar, I know you've been doing a lot of research, seeing a lot of that in the industry lately. Share any high-level use cases where you've seen companies successfully implement and utilize direct sourcing as part of their competitive advantage when it comes to talent acquisition.
Absolutely, and I'll try to be really brief because I know the time. So before I share I guess at least a use case that one of our clients is leveraging today, direct sourcing is basically it's the fastest growing talent acquisition strategy out there right now. About 75% of Fortune 500 companies are already leveraging this model already. So this is not necessarily new. People are just they're taking advantage because it's very compelling to be able to do this. Basically, if you had to define it, it's basically when a company leverages its own employer brand, right, and attracts and curates its own private talent pool of contractor network. That's all it is. So it's basically, you see the gig platforms, you see all those things. It's basically having your own private pool of consultants that you don't keep in the dark, that you curate, you touch base with, you make sure you advertise different positions. So before you actually call it out to the rest of the agencies, you try to see within your own network if you can fill these positions. Another big number is about 40% of applicants, 40% of full-time applicants that apply for full-time jobs are open to contract positions. So you already have a lot of these assets sitting within your internal ATSs today. So there's a lot of opportunities. So that, obviously those who know the business, it's pretty compelling from a brand perspective and also from a monetary perspective. You can save up to about 50% on markups on contingent labor if you adapt into this model, which most organizations already have the recruiting infrastructure already. Like, I know that all three of you guys right here have a pretty significant recruiting infrastructure in your organization, have the brand, have the different things out there. So a lot of companies are taking advantage of this model. We have one in particular that they were early adopters into this, and they've done really well. What they decided to do was they created an internal SLA to their different department heads. And what they did was they said, let's get 30 to 60 days to be able to fill these contract positions. They built their own private talent pool. They market positions, and they're able to hire their own contractors directly. So it's basically going direct to the talent versus the middleman. It's very compelling. It's also, when you do talent creation and build a talent community, a private community, these people want, and you brand, and you market to them, they want to work for your organization. And that's when you get better retention ratios anyway. The other thing, what's good about what they're experiencing is that they also leverage their own temp to perm program. So they're, sometimes their full-time roles, they may not be sure, or it might be just project related, or they're just not sure. They want to see how it works out for the next 3 to 6 months. They're leveraging that talent pool. They're going to that talent pool that they built and curated and hiring them directly without having the agency fees. So this is why, this is the fastest growing, because contingent labor is skyrocketing, right? Because the growth is huge. It's going to be it's actually in the top 5 spend categories of any budget within an organization. So, it's getting a lot of visibility, right? And more workers want to stay as contingent workers. Like with Ben's point, they want to stay contingent. Just over the last 12 months, we alluded to 2 million Americans are freelancers now. I mean, that's a big number. And those numbers are going to continue to grow. So the more companies that take advantage of this type of model, I think it'll win, secure talent faster, save money. And that's what it's about. It's just an alternative way to secure talent.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cesar, for those examples and the use cases of actual practical implementation. Unfortunately, I have to skip one section that we really wanted to cover as part of the, the questions that we had. So I'll jump straight to some of the questions that I've been getting all along from different our users. First one is, and Dalia, I'll let you take this one. What are the most in-demand skill sets that you are seeing these days in the market?
Well, in the hospitality space, everything that's in demand right now has to do with where we have the biggest shortage, which is hourly workers. So that would be on the resort operations side. That would be everything that services our guests. So housekeepers, maintenance positions, guest services positions. So that would cover our resort operations side, and there's a huge demand for that. Again, predominantly because of the fact that there's a shortage of labor in that space. Conversely, on our sales and marketing side, we also have a lot of demand on those skill sets. So I would call that, entry to mid-level face-to-face sales types of roles. And in that space, again, we have a shortage because of the same reason, because of the shortage of hourly workers. And lastly, contact centers. So for the same reasons, phone-based, whether it's inbound, outbound sales, all of those skill sets are very, very high in demand.
It's great. Thank you, Dalia. And feel free to reach out to Dalia for any of those opportunities.
Please.
The other question, and Scotty, I'll let you take this one. Do you have specific recommendations for improving candidate onboarding remotely? That's a great question.
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I will keep it short though. So I think there's a big plan. There needs to be a plan for the candidate almost a full entire first day. I think the biggest thing that I've heard from candidates and even friends going through onboarding remotely is that the first day is they're just lost and alone. And it's already hard enough starting a new job with you don't know anybody. And now you don't even feel like you can reach out to anybody or even be like, next to the person, be like, hey, can you help me with this? They don't know anything. They're walking into absolutely nothing but a computer. So I think it's our job to make sure that the first day, like there is a plan, they know who they're talking to so that they feel confident going in, even the first week, you know? So I feel like it's just, you know, in terms of onboarding, there needs to be a specific plan and it needs to be face-to-face because over the phone just isn't doing it and it's not making people feel welcomed.
Great. Thank you, Scotty. Those are great strategies. And probably the last question that we'll be able to take, Ben, I'll let you take this one. How can I succeed with regards to networking internally at the companies if everyone is fully remote? Wow, that's a great question.
Let's go.
Great question. Listen, you're talking to a guy who joined Citrix at the beginning of the pandemic and never have stepped foot in the office. So I feel your pain, whoever asked that question. It's actually, I mean, you know, that conversation has come up a lot when it comes to innovation in technology or in any other department too, right? Is, you know, a bunch of minds in a room together talking about product ideas or how to solve a problem. Is how we came up with great ideas in the past, and now everything is scheduled, so it's really difficult. You know, scheduling coffee conversations, right? Truly, you know, working the way that you work to network outside of your company, I think, is the way you do that. So leveraging your social media channels, leveraging your internal channels, whether you're on Slack or Teams or anything like that, and try and book some time with folks that, you know, you can just have a cup of coffee or, you know, share lunch with each other and be focused on your intent, right? Of, you know, not just saying, I just want to kind of hang out, but, you know, come with some questions, some interest in that individual so that you can learn more and learn your way to navigate. But, you know, I realize how hard it is to kind of find your way around an organization when you can't, as Scotty just said, turn to the person next to you and be like, who do I go to for this? Right? You don't know. And so you've got to try and build that network by just having friendly conversations and, you know, showing interest in the other people.
That's great. Those are great strategies. And thanks for keeping that concise. I guess, Cesar, 30-second response. There's a last question that came about. What are your thoughts on companies adjusting salaries for fully remote employees versus those that are on site or based on the geographic location? Wow.
Is he talking adjusting for less money, or they specifically?
I guess based on the geographic location, if you're relocating from New York to Florida, adjusting. So that's a great question.
You know, me personally, and maybe people may not like this, but I think that's a mistake. Me personally, I think if you got the right talent, you know, the value proposition is there. You have to pay people what they're worth and what they're getting. I mean, that's just the bottom line. It's, you know, how much does it cost? You got to start asking different questions. How much does it cost to lose an employee, a good employee? I mean, it's nowhere near the differential that would cost. That would be my answer. I mean, I like to basically pay on the top, a little bit above market, because I prefer to, you know, that be a question and have people 100% focus on, you know, what at least the money's taken care of. I'm not worried about that. I can focus on the stuff that I need to do. So that's how I would answer. It may not be you know, you'll probably have different camps on that, but that's my position.
Great. Nailed it. Perfect within the time block. Guys, I apologize. We weren't able to get to all the questions that are being asked and also the last section of the webinar. Can thank you now for our panelists for all the great insights. Personally learned quite a bit through this conversation. Hope everybody else who attended did the same. We'll share the recording with all of you in a couple of days. And again, thank you so much, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure.